Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall. Today, for the second time, I'm joined by Dan Olinger, the fantastic beat reporter for the Philadelphia 76ers for the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. We are going to get into the stars. How can the Knicks keep Jalen Brunson going? How will the Sixers try to slow him down? And how can the Knicks stop the duo of Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey just enough to finally end this series? All that and more next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because we are available on all platforms. And if you want to be an everyday or maybe even a twice a day or on special days like today, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and hit that notifications bell to ensure you never, ever miss an episode, and hit that auto download function. So let's just say you're watching us with your morning cereal, and then you got to go take the subway to get to work. You can keep the fun going on the audio side of things. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And once again, talking to our buddy Dan. If you missed it, this is part 2 of 2. Be sure to check out part 1, where we break down some broader themes in this series and some key battlegrounds heading into Game 6. I wanted to focus in on the stars to end this show: Jalen Brunson, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, how both sides are going to do battle. We'll get into all that and more right now on Locked On Knicks. Yeah, so let's try to zoom in on some of those matchups. After I'm going to make one more broad point, and it's that I think Tom Thibodeau, by and large, has done a great job this season. I think, even if it was out of necessity, going to and sticking with OG and Precious in Game 4 was such a demarcation point for him, in that it just wasn't something he would have been comfortable sticking with, even if it was working in the past. And him leading into that, ultimately won them that game, and it felt like this big victorious moment. And I just had this sinking feeling down the stretch of Game 5, all right, he is being outcoached here. And to me, that was as simple as just the Sixers having some sets to go to in overtime and getting Maxey. I mean, after the Knicks went up by 5 in OT and looked like, all right, maybe despite everything, we're going to pull this out. And I don't remember what exactly the sequence was. You probably do better than me, but Maxey just cashing in that wing 3 off some movement. And then I saw a tweet from a Sixers guy talking about how they ran what looked like was going to be the exact same play. Yeah. And then that turned into, so I can let you break this down.
I was going to say,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so the Maxey one, they had been running a Chicago action, which is just basic pin down dribble handoff. Every team in the league does it. The Knicks have done it. It's just basic starter action. But again, it was then deciding no more Embiid post-ups. We're running things through Maxey, get him going. And I mean, the Knicks got those 5 elite. The one thing I will say is not Tibbs' fault is you could see how mad he was at Mitch Robinson on Maxey's step back 3 in overtime, that Mitch forgot to put his hands up when Maxey pulled up from 3, and Tibbs looked like he wanted to kill him. He was just he 100% had told Mitch, listen, you got to be up on him. No more threes for him. And he completely forgot. Mitch Rob's a great player. He's had a great series. Just kind of got owned by Maxey down the stretch. So there's not much else to say. And he, like you said, I saw his post-game quotes. He took it. He did not say oh, I didn't know. He admitted it, but just can't do that again if the Knicks want to win. That can't happen. But yeah, they had been running those actions for Maxey to kind of get him loose a little bit, get him on the move. And they kind of looked like they were going to set it up again. The main thing is with this Horton's Chin play love, which is a back screen for one of their forwards. It gets Embiid sets a screen, Batum's their best passer. It gets to Oubre. Is that they had Maxey stand near Oubre because they knew Deuce would not help off of Maxey. Because usually what you want to have and the thing is Embiid setting the screen too, is by having Embiid and Maxey, the 2 players on their team with the most gravity, both be the guy who would be in help position and the screener, they basically guarantee the Knicks are not going to help off Embiid and Max. We know those were the 2 they will not leave. Put Tobias on the other corner because it's the one they would help off of. And I mean, it's just a thing where it's a good counter. I'm sure the Knicks would be able to defend it well if they saw it the second time. It's just a really good call. And again, it requires Nick Nurse trusting Batum and Oubre, not Maxey and Embiid, to deliver for his team when they're tied with 1 minute left. It's very hard to take the ball out of your best player's hands in that situation. Because say Oubre drops the ball, Nurse would be getting roasted for, you called up a play for Kelly Oubre in a tie game with 1 minute left.
And the thing is, they almost screwed it up. We have to say, that should have been a lob.
Kelly almost dropped the pass.
Or a lob layup, and instead he had to finish a 180 over Hartenstein, which he ended up doing. And I guess this is where it's tricky for me, because I don't know. how much of that do I put on Tibbs, and how much of that do I put on the Knicks? Have one player with gravity right now in Jalen Brunson. Like it would be incredible to have Julius Randle, and that was the beauty of the 14 game stretch that Knicks fans will memorialize in history, at least until next season. And hopefully we get a fully healthy season out of those three guys. But the Knicks just kind of walked into moments like that where you'd have to leave someone wide open because of Randall's gravity, because of Brunson's gravity, because OG was such a good corner shooter. And because of the first time it's been a brief era, but in the 2-year era, those two, you had two good shooters on the floor at all times around them. And a good amount of the time, a center in Hartenstein that is not a spacer, but compared to Mitchell Robinson, is a little bit of a spacer, and now that's gone for the Knicks. And late in games, like I've said, like this has felt tenuous all series, even when the Knicks were up 3-1, because the Knicks cannot get any easy offense late in games. It is roll the ball out for Jalen Brunson and watch him cook. And the irony of them losing this game 5 is it was some of their best late game offense, and them playing out of Jalen Brunson being double teamed. And over and over again, I mean, in the first half, him finding Josh Hart in those situations, and Hart having the touch lob to Mitch, having the next play where Embiid stayed home because he was wary of that, and then Hart just put in the floater. And then at the end of the game, Deuce getting involved in that action and having the short roll for the straight on 3, and then having what looked like the game-winning bucket where Brunson was trapped, and it felt like in previous games, all right, that would have been it for the possession, and Brunson was going to chuck up a 36-footer with 2 guys on him. Deuce cut to the foul line, got the ball, sank the shot, and you can't really ask for more than that. And in overtime, the Sixers, I think smartly decided to play Brunson a little bit more straight up and said, if you're going to beat us, it's going to be because you score 12 points in OT. And Brunson got to 9, but he missed a free throw, and he missed just enough shots, a few really tough ones over Batum, and that was it. So I guess where I want to zoom in next, and then we can flip to the other side of the floor and call this a day. But do the Sixers have any adjustments left in terms of how they guard Jalen Brunson? We saw them trapping, and teams have tried to do that a lot in the second half of the season. And by and large, it has really backfired just because Josh Hart has that innate Draymond Green-esque ability to just be fantastic as a 4-on-3 creator. And then the other thing we saw the Knicks do that people were calling for all series is really lean into those empty side pick and rolls, and over again, Embiid would come up and Brunson would just blow by him, and somehow had enough gas to do that. In OT, Embiid, you probably have a better assessment of this than I do, but to me, just looked like he was more comfortable sinking back a little bit more, kind of daring Brunson to go back to that in between game, and then Embiid was winning at the rim over and over again. If there's one thing he did great in that game, it was his defense in overtime. But do you think Philly shifts things up at all, or do you think they kind of lean into, you know what, we're gonna make this guy take 35 shots and he's gonna have to hit 20 to 22 to beat us?
Yeah, I mean, the cop-out answer is, they're going to go between multiple looks, because they've constantly shifted what they've been doing. Like, the first 2 games, it was, we're giving Josh Hart, like, not Ben Simmons treatment, but, like, it is, like,
close to it.
How we saw teams treat Josh Giddey in the regular season when they played the Thunder, which is like, listen, if this guy makes threes, that's too bad. But then Josh Hart, again, I kept tweeting the stat out. He did not hit 4 threes in a single game all regular season. He hit 4 threes in each of the first 3 games. Like, credit to him. Like, if you're a Sixers fan, it's like, something must hate us. Like, how is this happening? But also, like, Josh Hart's a basketball player who is good. And, like, there is side to making those shots. That's a skill. It's like, he was not afraid. Josh, like, started stepping in those shots, and he was not afraid to take them. He wanted to make them pay, and the Sixers had to change. You saw Lowry start closing out on him, like, trying to get the ball out of his hands. But so after the first 2 games where they were doing that, like, aggressive nail help and trying to take Brunson away at all costs, games 3 and 4, it was more like, all right, let's see if we can just live with Brunson cook. Like, let's see if we just let Brunson do this. But then in game 4, Brunson did just destroy them, where they did not have enough help for them. He kind of just, like, was picking apart everyone who he wanted in one-on-one. And in game 5, it was like more of like I was saying, the multiple looks, where at first it was a lot of doubles, and especially in those late quarter possessions, like, let's see if he wants to just take it himself. If it's late in the quarter, if it's late in the game, let's try and double him. Let's see if he's going to do it or not. But he kept making those right passes. Deuce kept hitting those shots. And then in overtime, like you said, they kind of were like, listen, if Brunson hits every single pull-up he takes, that's just too bad for us. We're going to have to live with that. We're going to try and make it this. We're going to make sure he has to give a Herculean effort if they're going to win this game. And despite all the big shots he hit, they got enough, like, contested floaters from Batum, who does a great job with those rear view contests, like, just closing with length. Embiid had some incredible plays at the rim. He got the one strip on Brunson, which I almost think Jalen was just surprised in that play. Embiid was willing to swipe down without his health's been compromised. Embiid's been moving so slowly, and it's the thing where all Sixers fans have been talking about is early season Embiid, when he was still healthy, was like just murdering people on defense. They couldn't get anywhere. He was moving like crazy. Just like Embiid's had like these early seasons to late season things before with all the injuries, but especially this season, he was moving so well, just all over the court. And now it's a thing where he basically can only break it out for spurts. And like he can have a 3-minute stretch where like, okay, I can blitz, I can recover, I can jump, I can get over people. He can have that game 1 dunk that almost took him out where he throws it off the backboard to himself. Like his lift and his explosion can only come in these little stretches, and then it's gone. And then he has to go back to deep drop. Probably can't really move that well. The knee is like flaring up a bit again. Like it's just not going to work. Like literally in overtime, he had the one play where Brunson beat him around to the one layup on the right side. But then Brunson tried to get that floater on him, and incredible block by Embiid, just like waiting, and times it perfectly and destroys it. Just it's all going to be this kind of give and take of how is Embiid feeling right now? How are we feeling about Brunson right now? Do we want to keep some of these multiple looks? With how bad their double teams were, like, I mean, the Knicks made them pay, but some of them were like on the Deuce one to put them up 6 late in the game. Like, why Kelly Oubre's out with Josh Hart near the logo instead of that Deuce who's just standing wide open at the free throw line? It's like a little as me like, well, you can close out on Josh Hart if you're still on Deuce at the free throw line. Like the Sixers would need to be more clean with their rotation. So I would lean towards them trying to see like, listen, we're going to have to make this another like Brunson has to play like hero ball or almost sense, or just if we're going to lose, Brunson has to make all these tough mid-range shots. We cannot just we are tired of seeing Deuce McBride hit open threes against us. Like that better not be the way we lose this game. Just because this guy who has proven to be a very good NBA shooter keeps getting open threes, we at least want to make these tough jumpers that they're hitting. So I'd probably lean towards that, but it's probably again like with the lineups, it's all going to be about how Nurse is feeling the game. How does he want to shift between this? How is the game played out to that point? So I think the biggest key would be that if whatever they do in the first half doesn't work, I don't think they will just stick with it. Nurse will very much say, all right, scrap that game plan. We're trying something else. Like he is not going to just stick with it if it's not working.
All right, we've broken down the Knicks side of things. Let's break down the Sixers. How can the Knicks slow down Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and do just enough to put this series to rest? We'll get into that next on Locked On Knicks. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team with friends or time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the board with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like Digging for Treasure or Robot Panchico Machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. And today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized, that's the word, ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Price in the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And that is a big deal for me because I am lucky enough to live within a mile of MSG. So I'm constantly looking in the first and second quarter, and finding the ticketing site that gives you the best deal possible is a game changer because they let you save so much money on last-minute tickets. Seriously, up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, or more. And they also offer flash deals. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And here's my favorite part, the lowest price guarantee. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So there's literally no world where Game Time isn't your best option. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so let's flip to the other side of the ball to wrap things up and what the Knicks can do against Embiid and Maxey. And to your point, like it's probably a lot of different things. It's always one of the funniest parts of like these great series and these coaches who are legitimately brilliant, but oftentimes the adjustment is like, all right, let's go back to that first thing we did that didn't ultimately work, but the current thing we're doing is not working. So let's just try that one more time. And it's this funny thing where you're just out of options at a certain point and you just have to try everything. But that being said, if I'm the Knicks, I would almost lean a little bit more, and not all the way, but a little bit more into daring Joel Embiid to beat them and to go out there and to be that guy, because he like just from and like energetically, like it was a weird vibe in that first half, a disastrous start for him where he was 1 for 8. And again, the Knicks were like a crap, I want to say a different word, but I'll say a crap show on offense in the first quarter. And the Sixers just couldn't really separate. The Knicks rip off that 21-2 run to start the second, and it was because Embiid was just a disaster, and he got it together to some extent as the game went along. But where he had most of his success as a passer, and it wasn't exclusively, but mostly, was to Tyrese Maxey when the Knicks gave him like these easy looks by doubling with Maxey 1 pass away. And for Joel Embiid, that is food. That is an incredibly easy decision. Maxey is too good of a shooter. He's in too much of a rhythm right now. He's just going to keep taking advantage of that. And where he committed a bunch of turnovers was when they doubled him along the baseline, and he was like, all right, I have to hit Tobias Harris on a cut. I have to hit Kelly Oubre on a cut. And over again, he would try to matrix those passes in and just continue to miss them. And I wonder if the Knicks can bait him into doing that even a little bit more. And the single biggest thing, obviously, and this is another point by our friend Benji, but just not doubling a pass away from Maxey, because that is death. It is dumb, and the result is just inevitable on that. And then as far as guarding Maxey, I don't know if there are any obvious solutions. Obviously, they want to keep him away from that right hand as much as possible. And in the Knicks film school video breakdown of the game, they did a great job pointing out that Dante actually did a pretty good job of that as compared to Deuce. And I think in general, Deuce, he did a nice job in game 1 on Maxey, but like overall, like the Knicks, there just isn't really a one-on-one answer. And the best case scenario for them is that Maxey doesn't take that floater and he tries to get all the way to the rim, and Anunoby just gets there first and goes straight up. And the Knicks were able to force a couple of misses that way. To your point, maybe they bring Precious back and you have a big who's at least a little bit more switchable than Mitchell Robinson, who's only playing on 1 foot right now. And Maxey was just torturing late in this game. Hartenstein is obviously kind of the middle ground there, where you have someone physically big enough to guard Embiid and someone fleet of foot enough, at least at the end of game 2, to challenge Maxey a little bit. There's no easy answers. Both those guys are superstars. Maxey, I mean, looks like someone who is going to walk into next year as a consensus top 15 or so player in basketball. And going into this series, I probably would have had him 10 to 15 spots further back than that. He's could not have impressed me more and caused me more pain. But what do the Knicks do as we kind of wrap up this series to try and make life as difficult as possible in those two? And it just sort of feels like if they can get one more, maybe not disaster game, but one more below average game from either of those two guys, the Knicks will have a pretty good chance in one of these.
As far as Embiid goes, it's a thing where so much for him right now, because like I said, all that movement and explosion he had early in the season is gone right now. So much is dependent on his jumper, which he's an incredible shooter. Like you see like what happens in game 3, like sometimes the dude can just hit every jumper in the world, and it truly does feel unstoppable. Like there, you might as like there's nothing like that third quarter of game 3, there was nothing the Knicks could do when Joel was hitting some of those threes. Like that's just unlucky if you're the Knicks at that point, that they're playing a guy shooting like that. But if his shots aren't following, like, I mean, there is a thing to like not doubling him there, because especially as long as Hartenstein and Mitch Rob aren't getting in foul trouble then on those plays, like, yeah, I would say trusting them down there, just because, you know, in the playoffs, they let you be more physical. I'm sure like if it's it doesn't matter, because like none of us are the referees. If you're a Sixers fan watching, like on the all Embiid's like hook shots, you're like, oh, they're grabbing him or fouling this. If you're Knicks fans, like, oh, it's just good playoff basketball. Like, what all that matters what the referees call, and from what I've seen in the series, like that's generally allowed. If it's like a physical shot in the paint, like they're just, refs are much more liable to call on these like post-ups, like to call thall fouls on these rip-ups like outside the key where there's more space to see it, versus in the paint is like if you're not like going up strong towards the rim, that doesn't seem like they call it that much. So, and Embiid was like, he couldn't get a single one to fall against the Knicks in that game 5. They were all missing. That Hartenstein and Mitch Rob did a good job of being physical with him and forcing his tough shots. So yeah, as long as unless his jumper starts falling like crazy, I get what you're saying definitely about like not doubling him, but trying to see, you have two pretty good defenders inside in those two, and trying to trust them and hope that they can do it. And like we said, the OG, if you're going to double, like try and make it that OG Precious lineup where that kind of, because OG and Precious then are better at rotating out of that if they need to get off the ball once Embiid's there, and Precious being on Kelly kind of throws him off a bit, and OG can, because of his mobility and ability to get low, can front Embiid much better than Hartenstein and Mitch Rob can. He is just more liable to get in a good position in front of them because he can kind of get under Embiid. So I would say if you're going to double him, it's probably going to be with that lineup because that's the lineup where it really threw them off. That's the only time the Sixers looked super uncomfortable against the doubles against the Knicks is when it was that lineup specifically. And then, for Maxey, it's Sixers fans have talked about it too, where, again, some Sixers fans like, oh, Maxey can't get a call going to the rim, but it's really been a thing where I know he's frustrated when he sometimes goes all the way to the rim, but like a lot of these are good contests by the Knicks too, where it's a thing where Maxey, the next step for him is like needing to slow down a little bit, where he's like almost so determined to get to the rim. It's part of what makes him great is how determined he is, that he's just like not slowing. There's space for him in the paint, and like Brunson has done such a good job of pulling up for those short mid-range shots. Maxey is like, I have to finish through OG Anunoby right now on this play, which he doesn't always have to do. So it's some of that like where he needs to calm down that, but it also does keep the pressure on the Knicks. Like I'm sure you can attest, Maxey puts pressure on your defense. Like it is.
Dude, I'm losing years off my wife watching this. Every time he has the ball, I'm like, it's a step back three, or he's just blowing by someone to get to. I'm so tired of seeing Tyrese Maxey win or lose this series. I cannot wait for the day where the Knicks do not have to play him again this year. And that's as much as I can compliment him.
Yeah, it's a thing where he just, because if his step back three is falling, it is a little bit like, what's the answer here? Because usually that's the thing, is sometimes it's not always falling, but when it is, you start to run out of options with him. There is some merit to, should you be doubling Maxey? Because Maxey's improved a lot as a passer this year, but I would say he's a more adept scorer than he is a passer, particularly like he does like to drive a lot with his right hand. That's also like the side he likes to pass from. He is not as much more, if the Knicks like trap him on the left, he's usually going to try and pivot and spin back, which costs him some time because he is not really as comfortable throwing that pass with his left hand. So it's really just, if you trap him on that left side, there's probably a little bit more like, as long as you don't give him a wide open pass to a corner, he's not going to like hit the cross court to the other side. Most likely, if he does, it's a really impressive pass, but not one Maxey has always made. He's much more likely to make that go into his right, where he's just more comfortable with the ball in his hands. But yeah, I just think defensively, that's probably, when to double Maxey and when to double Embiid are the keys for them. Because it's not like, except for those dribble handoffs they run for Oubre, it's not like there's a ton of design plays for the other guys in the offense. They don't have a lot of other creation options. They aren't going to, like Tobias will get a few touches each game. And again, I guess they tried to run flex action for him like 5 times to start game 5. And eventually it somehow got him going against OG to at least the point he could be functional in the game, and had a pretty good one. So yeah, maybe you see a little bit more of that. Although I would trust if Tobias like misses his first 5 shots in the first quarter, like there's not going to be more plays run for Tobias the rest of the game. Most likely that'll probably just be tested out, see if he's got it. If he doesn't, he's probably not getting more design plays. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's all dependent on what lineups the Knicks want to go to. Is Embiid's shot falling or not? Is Maxey's shot falling or not? Because whether their jumper is falling or not depends, kind of alters how much attention you have to bring them. Like if Embiid is missing those mid-range jumpers he likes so much, you can probably just leave Hartenstein and Mitch Rob on him. If he starts making all of them left and right, you probably got to get it out of his hands. So it's just going to be obviously like this is like the most obvious thing to say, but however, how will the both coaches react to the first half of game 6 will be really interesting, because you're at the point in the series where it's this close and both teams have adjusted a few times now to try and counter the other, and just who is winning at halftime of game 6 and how does the other coach like respond to that? Like, what is his move?
Yeah. And it would, I guess on that front, it'd be nice if the Knicks actually came out and got off to a good start, though the only game they got off to a good start was the one they lost before.
Well, they always have the non-Embiid minutes to outscore the Sixers by 8 every time without question.
Yeah, that's nice. And the Knicks survived the non-Brunson minutes pretty well. So all this is to say there's a lot going into it. I'm sure we will both be on the edge of our seats. But Dan Olinger, before I let you go, can you let everyone know where they can find your fantastic work? And basketball gods forbid this goes to a game 7 where they can check out what I'm sure will be a great preview of that one as well. And I want to mention the preview wrote for game 6 and reviewing game 5 is awesome. And I highly encourage people to check it out.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for having me on. You can just find me on Twitter at Dan_Olinger. Again, I know since most of you listening are probably Knicks fans, like a lot of my tweets probably going to be about the Sixers, but will be at least relevant to you for at least one more game at the minimum. And then, right for the rights to Ricky Sanchez, where I just wrote about Game 5. Again, not sure if you would want to read that if you're a Knicks fan, but if you want to be frustrated at some more mistakes and see where they could be corrected, you can probably see some of that too. I also write a few times at Sporting News and just generally it's mainly the Sixers, but I love hoops and I'll tweet about everything in basketball. So yeah, that's pretty much all you can find me at.
All right. Thanks, Dan. And we'll be back with a Game 6 recap, either a really happy or a really depressing podcast. But until then, we'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.